Our next speaker is Suj from IBM Federal Systems Division. She'll introduce herself, she says.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. I'm Suj and I come from Washington, D.C. So, obviously, I work with the federal government. Can you hear me okay? So, my main customers are the National Security and Justice and also the Homeland Security program that I work with. Right now, DevOps is a very key topic for us. So, let me go there. And this is what I want to talk about. So I want to briefly talk about what DevOps is. I'm not going to dive into too many details, and I want to also say what are the main capabilities and the automation benefits that we want to focus on, and some of the adoption roadmaps that I have been discussing with my customers. They want to know how do we adopt DevOps. So what I have used with them and I had success with, and DevOps roles and responsibilities, right? You know, DevOps deals with the software engineering basically. So I want to throw some light on what are the types of roles that we have right now that we can utilize in the DevOps also, and what are the evolving roles with DevOps. And if I had the time, and I'm being kind here, if I had the time, I also want to talk quickly about how we have used DevOps for a couple of cloud opportunities, cloud deployments, and also one very key mobile technology solution. And before that, actually, I want to say, explore a little bit about how DevOps is influencing the way we work today, both the software engineers and the architects. So without any delay, let me proceed. So the main features of the DevOps is collaborative development. The DevOps wants you to actually, the development teams need to work together. And even before I go there, I want to introduce as to the term DevOps. I have been asked this question multiple times yesterday as to what DevOps is. I think DevOps is the IT methodology of the millennium. And the term, the DevOps, is actually coined as a contraction of the two words development and operations. And the way the reason why they did that was they want the development and the operations teams to work together. And why do they have to work together? So they can continuously, rapidly deliver software products that are of quality. The collaboration just doesn't end with working together, right? It also talks about integrating the processes that you have to deal with and also use common tools. So coming back to the features of the DevOps, the collaborative development is very important, right? You know, you are working, not just two developers sitting together and going through JavaScript and HTML5. It is about all the stakeholders, including the development teams, working together, right, across the teams, across the time zones, and polyglot programming, and also cross-platform development. You have to take all these into consideration. And continuously testing. Once you develop, there is no lag time or wait time. You continuously test the code that you develop. And one crucial difference between the traditional development and DevOps is in DevOps, the test environments are virtualized. So what you can do is, with virtualized environments, you can share those environments across the teams, so you do not have multiple instances of the virtual environments, and these test environments change with the change in requirements. And continuous release and deployment. In DevOps, the release and the deployment processes are automated. And the deployment goes to testing when it needs to be tested, and to production when it needs to be production. And continuously monitoring. So I cannot stress enough about monitoring, but I do not want my customers to go for an overkill of monitoring and badgering the developers because they're not building it fast enough. The monitoring is about, it should be practical. It should be about, these are your goals and are you able to achieve them fast enough, right? So use them more proactively for releasing the stuff that you need. So it is an agile development methodology. So none of us are new to agile development, right? So it is an evolution of what we already have been doing. Okay, so what do we need DevOps? Can't we do with what we already have? We have so many good traditional development methodologies, right? So I think we should be able to do that. But there is a problem. We cannot do with what we have already because we are fast and furiously hit by the millennium technologies, the cloud, the mobile technologies, the big data technologies, right? There is an explosion of unstructured and data that has been dumped on us in the last 2 years. 80% of the big data that we have today was generated in the last 2 years. So just imagine that. And the kind of demands that we get from the customers, everybody has 2 or 3 smart devices. Everybody is constantly on the web and telling what is right, what is not, what's working, and so on. So there are a lot of customer demands. The market trends are changing very fast. And we are also dealing with another problem, which is the economy, right? It's plummeted, there's not a lot of funding, and every customer I talk to, they want to do better, but with less. So cost efficiencies are very, very important also. So why can't I work with the traditional development methods? There are some challenges, right? The first challenge is it's costly. There are a lot of manual processes in a traditional development methodology. I think we tried a lot to automate those processes, but still I think it is an asynchronous process. Most of the development methodologies that we have are not synchronous. So, and they are not continuous. So that is the difference I wanted to take away. Waiting and unproductive. So you are all cool about developing this greatest stuff that you tools, and then you test them, and then you are waiting on the build engineer to deploy it, right? The tyranny of the build engineers. Who doesn't remember that, right? I have nothing against them. Their job is very difficult. It is mostly done in the night, and the developers, right? They're constantly changing. They want to be cowboys mending fences constantly, right? There's no stopping them. So it's a tough job, but still I think we need a process to cater to the demands that we have from the millennial technologies. We have to have a better process. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And also the technologies that we have to deal with are not limited to one vendor or 2 vendors, right? The customers are going and buying products, infrastructure and services from a variety of vendors, right? So you have to have some kind of way to deal with integrating different technologies, working with different people, processes and tools. So there is a chaotic environment that we need to deal with. I think, so I already talked about millennial technologies like the mobile, social big data and so on. So their demands are, we need to be agile, right? We have to respond today. We cannot have a project plan that is 5 years longer and $200 million costlier. So it has to happen now. So the customer expectations are, there are so many trendy applications out there. They just want to know the information today and act on it. The business environments are changing, and there are a lot more regulations today than 2 years ago. I have to deal with new security regulations almost every day. So that's where the DevOps comes to rescue, right? What it is providing is accelerated software delivery, but it is also providing a continuous delivery that is quality-based because we are testing continuously, and it is also helping us save a lot of money because you are using virtualization, you are sharing resources, processes, and so on. They are working as a team. So I know I have been saying this, but I want what DevOps is in a simple term, not in a technological term. So if you look at the left-hand side, on the customer side, so the requirements are always starting with the customer, right? And the customer says, I want this. This is how I want an application to work with. And the business owner takes it and passes it on to the development, and development it goes into production. But if you see in between, there is a circulation, right? So you go back, you release the feature to the customer, and you go back and listen to the customer and come back. So there is a continuous communication. If there are three things that you want to take away from DevOps. It is communications, collaboration, right, and integration of your processes and tools. That is what I wanted to work with. So the plan and measure, develop, test, release, deploy, and monitor and optimize. So because the customers are going and buying all their technologies and services from multiple vendors, we are now having a problem of interoperability, right? We're being able to work with all the solutions that are out there. So you are dealing with multiple technologies and services and so on. So it's very important for the DevOps to work on some standardization of these technologies. So OSLC is a standards body for exactly that. What it does is it promotes integration technologies, and it came up for all kinds of millennial technologies like cloud and mobile and so on. So it's very important to have the standards backing for doing something like this. So you all know what we are dealing with, right? So DevOps definitely takes into consideration the standards that we need to follow. That is the message I'm trying to pass on here. So how do we DevOps? So when I talk to my customers, they say, okay, remember that all the methodologies that I'm using now, and when you promote DevOps, let me know how I can adopt it, right? So I talk to them in terms of developing roadmaps and also developing maturity models, right? So this is, and a couple of things that I tell them, right? Be aware of what you already have. All the technologies that you have invested in, so let's try to leverage them. But think about DevOps, adopting DevOps in three ways. One is have common practices across your organization, or at least the immediate group that you're working in, right? And try to automate all the manual processes that are very simple to automate. Like say, for example, requirements gathering is one thing, change management, and even developing reports and sharing them. That is so identify all the manual tasks that you have right now and let's automate them, right? And third, if you are customer facing, I definitely want them to have a feedback loop as part of the process, right? So those are some of the important things to remember. And also when they want to measure and monitor, I want them to be reasonable about it, right? They cannot say, okay, I want to build a multi-million-dollar 300 requirement project, but I want to be ready in 3 months. They cannot do that. So they have to have reasonable measurements and monitoring. So the approach I take them with is we sit down, all the stakeholders, or at least the people who are very keen about that application, we all sit down and we identify the pain points. And I use the patterns and spreadsheets that I have, that I take to them, and we document everything. And when they come to the meeting, they're not leaving the meeting to take care of this or that. They're really focusing on the problem, right? So it is kind of like this Scrum exercise. So once they identify the key pain points, what we do is we take the 4 steps of the DevOps. Remember the plan and measure, develop and test, and release and deploy, and so on. So that goes in the horizontal, and we categorize the requirements in the vertical axis. I'll show you an example over here. So we assess the current responsibilities and assign them. based on each step that needs to happen in DevOps. So then what we do is we create a heat map. So these are all the requirements that you want to do, but let's prioritize them because you cannot do everything at the same time. So this is something I need, nice to have, but this is something I definitely need for this project, right? And this we are already doing, so on. So, and then establish a roadmap. So take all the things, take the heat map and come up with some timelines. Okay, this is the timeline I want to take, this is what I want to accomplish, and so on. So let me give you a sample of how I do that. This is a sample maturity model. So as I was saying, I take the DevOps steps and keep them on the horizontally on the top. And look at this vertical axis here. So we have the capabilities that are practiced, that are repeatable, reliable, and scaled. Practice are these are the steps or practices that you have. Some groups are practicing it. It's not across the board, right? Some people like it, some groups like it, and it is practiced a little bit. And repeatable is more than one group is doing it. Then that's a practice that's being repeated a little bit more. And when it comes to reliability, that means a majority of the groups within the organization are comfortable with their process, and they have seen some successes, right? And scale is it is a very popular capability, and it's an enterprise capability right now. That's when I call it the scale. So what we do is we take the requirements, we make a map of this, and if you see, I categorize them as fully achieved, partially achieved, and the goals. Greens are the goals. So let me give you an example. Supposing we are in the phase 1, what we do is they have a project that they need to do in a certain timeline. So what we do is we go with the practice. Supposing we are here, and then we achieve the goal. That's phase 1. So they learn some things as to what went wrong and what is working, and in some of these practices that are limited to some of the groups are good enough to move them to the repeatable and eventually to the reliable, right? So if this is phase 1, my phase 2 could be here, right? So I am moving up horizontally and also to the right. So ultimate goal of the DevOps for them is to be able to be here. But will they ever reach there? It depends, right? You want to achieve these goals, but not necessarily all the way here. It's nice to have, I think. So it is a journey. DevOps is a journey, is what I'm trying to say here. I think DevOps definitely influences how the two roles very clearly. One is the software engineers and the architects, right? The software engineers are the people who get involved from end to end of the development. So the software architects are the people who come and design solutions for components, right? It can be information integration, it can be a security architect, it can be ESB architect, and so on. So you have different roles. But what is happening right now because of the DevOps is the architects cannot say, okay, I'm only in charge of the security architecture. I do my architecture and I'm not going to worry about what happens. It cannot happen that cannot happen anymore, because if you remember the collaboration, right, and communication needs to happen. So they have to stay engaged, not just for their component, but to see how it is affecting the other integrated components, right? And if you Google DevOps, you will see a lot of hits for DevOps architect. That's an evolving role. So I think the software engineering engineers and also architects, we have to start thinking about a DevOps architect. Really understand what DevOps principles are and how you can implement that in your projects and so on. So I think both the software engineers and the architects have to collaborate across the team and also have the visibility across the processes, right? This is the typical DevOps team. If you actually look at them, you have the business developers, users, infrastructure operations, and so on. These are all very common to our traditional development methods. But what is different is there is a continuous communication and collaboration that is happening. And there are three roles that are evolving today. One is the release engineer, right? The second one is the infrastructure engineer. That's a very top, very hot role right now. And also the DevOps architect. So those are the evolving roles for DevOps. So 5 minutes, I have 5 minutes. So I'll try to go through two simple exercises of what we did for cloud and mobile architectures. I think cloud is a classic playground for DevOps, right? You have infrastructure as a service, processes, and you also have software as a service and so on. So it's a perfect playground for creating and executing DevOps, right? So you can provide rapid provisioning of the virtual, private, and hybrid clouds. I was talking, you can test in those environments, and you can deploy from there, and you can streamline the services delivery, right, using DevOps. And so once you develop the DevOps process, say for example for the developer, for one component or for one customer, so you are successful with that, you can repeat that with the other customers, especially when you have the multi-tenancy, right? So you don't have to establish multiple testing environments, multiple operations environments, and so on. So you build it once, you use it many times. And mobile systems. So I had a very good experience with one of the customers. They started with, by the way, all the federal employees, they have been using mobile devices even before we got started on them, right? And they all use Blackberries, and even today they are using a lot of Blackberries. So it's very important for them to make sure that the federal employees are the only ones who can access the federal systems, right? They have to make sure the external entities are not tapping into their system. So they started with a security requirement to identify, right, to monitor who is tapping into their system. And then, because the federal employees started using all these cool devices, they look at all these apps and they say, we can do all this cool stuff outside the work, we want to do that at work too. So they started building apps, and it became very popular. So this customer has a strong mobile technology infrastructure setup. They're very, very successful. And then they started deploying the enterprise solutions into that. Just imagine, they started with the security and they adopted the mobile technologies, and they were very successful because they were able to use the continuous delivery and monitoring system. So that is my conclusion. I think DevOps is very cool. I think it reduces a lot of risk and cost, which is very important for my customers. It unifies processes, right? They're all always talking together. We are using common tools across an end-to-end life cycle. It definitely increases the quality, and customer feedback is there. That is what we needed to achieve. So, thank you. And
questions? Yes. Okay, well, how does all this comply with the acquisition processes of the federal government?
So that's a very good question, right? The DevOps is very popular with the federal government right now, because before DevOps, the federal government programs were very long, 5 to 7 years. For me, it is an eternity, right? And also very, very expensive. And if you look at the federal government regulations, the number one thing is consolidation, data center consolidation. They want to cut down the cost. So they want to do a lot more with less money and faster. So I think DevOps actually answers all those questions. So the acquisition process, right now when I look at the proposals that are coming from the federal government, it's not 7 years anymore. and that's very good news, right? The way the trends are changing so fast, it will be antiquated by the time we approach 7 years. So I think it's getting to be better and faster. And by the way, my federal customers are highly technically savvy. They are there already before me, and they know all about the open source technologies. The range of products and solutions are available out there. So it is really an exciting time to work with the federal customers right now.
Any other questions?
Yes.
So what's your lifecycle right now?
So that actually depends on the size of the project. So right now the mobile technology project that we worked on, the initial phase one where they just wanted to establish a mobile technology infrastructure and build applications and so on, was less than 2 years, because that was new technologies for them. But from there, actually making those applications available across the agencies and so providing the enterprise solutions, that was much shorter. I think they could accomplish that in 1 year, less than 1 year.
If you don't
No, the phase one, where when they started, they had no mobile technology infrastructure at all, right? They were just using Blackberries for communications. From there to the end of the phase one is they wanted to establish a mobile technology infrastructure and have the ability to develop applications for their own teams. So because they were new to technologies and so on, it took them about less than 2 years to get there and be comfortable with what they can do with those technologies and develop some apps and so on. Phase two, end of phase two from there is to be absolutely be confident about using the technologies and also have the confidence to deploy or make the enterprise solutions available on mobile services was another key. So I think that was very drastic for federal agencies.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Yeah.
Have you found an ideal setup for a DevOps team? Is that by product? Is that by portfolio? Is that by project? What have you seen in the success of standing up dev teams or dev being successful?
Can you repeat that? Is it about the products or about setting up the development?
So you mentioned a couple of times building a platform, a project, these DevOps teams standing them up. What is the ideal success in terms of relating them to work? Specifically, is it aligning them with the product line? Like, can you just comment on that?
So I think I'm an IBMer. So the DevOps platform is my recommendations are predominantly IBM recommendations because I had a lot of experience with that. So it was mostly the services for mobile technology was the biggest success I had with DevOps. You have to understand DevOps is still nascent, right? We are talking about continuous delivery, continuous development, and so on. But doing all of them together on a project is still new to many organizations. So I think the platform is both human and the technology. I think the participating teams have to be willing to come and participate, right? Technology can only do so much for you, right? So I think it takes both the angles. I hope I answered your question. We can talk more.
Okay, well, thank you again.